Hey everyone, it's Dr. Rick. So what I'm going to show you today is an overhead press. For those of you who have shoulder issues, weak shoulders, rotator cuff pain, bursitis, I think it's fair to try this movement. It's a strong one, but if done sloppy, it can cause a tear, worsening tear, or actually flare up a bursitis in the shoulder. So I have another video on poor scapular movement, but this, if you do it on an incline bench that's almost tilted to 90 degrees up, it can isolate the shoulder, the rhomboid, and stop you from moving excessively to hopefully just hit the deltoid. There's three heads to the deltoid: anterior, middle, and posterior, and they can do a lot of work. But the problem is, if you have problems with the scapula, the rhomboids, the trapezius, or that little guy in here called rotator cuff, if you hit the wrong angle, it turns on inflammation and it's immediate pain. It's grabbing pain. Those of you who have a problem with the labrum, that's a problem because they can actually get stuck. So this is just an option for folks who are trying to develop overhead press. I would say strict is better when you're first starting out. Overhead press, if you happen to have a Smith machine like this with little locks on the side, great, because it becomes your spot. You know, when you have a spotter, they watch you for assistance in any weak part of the movement. Well, this is like your fake assistant. So what I would do is try to start with your bar at an extended level instead of starting down here, because this is usually the weak spot. From here to here is weak. Here is usually when you can move or engage a lot of accessory muscles. Again, if you're isolated on the bench, you're going to stop excessive movement and swing so you can develop just the deltoid. So what I would do would be to set the lowest possible weight, just so you get used to the movement, and you set it high. I can't get it to the next bar, else it would be too hard for me to reach. So you take it off of the safeties and you lower it slowly, and you can only go in one tract because it's controlled by these mechanical arms on the side. So if you lower down just above the pectoralis muscle, about where your collarbones meet, and you push straight up, knowing or feeling where the rhomboids are or where your scapula are in space, pushed up against the cushion of the seat, then you effectively work the deltoids without sloppy movement. You can kind of indirectly control your scapular movement, and you hopefully will avoid that pathway that impinges on the rotator cuff. So rotator cuff is a small, tiny muscle that initiates movement in the shoulder. The problem is it's so tiny and slips underneath the acromion, and that's a small space. So if that muscle is irritated, it swells up and it gets wedged into the space, and sometimes that will begin the tearing process. Now, if you have a dislocation because you're a thrower, you overthrew, you subluxed your shoulder, that's not good. As long as you get checked out by an orthopedic surgeon or maybe a sports medicine doctor, we can check you out, fully evaluate you physically, and maybe get an MRI. But the idea is, once you pass all that stuff, if you've already graduated from your physical therapist, this will be something that will keep you engaged even after graduation. So I do believe that if you don't exercise your deltoids, your pecs, the big movement muscles, they become atrophic. And as you get older, 30, 40, 50, 60, if you don't turn on the muscle stimulation on a regular basis, you have or suffer from sarcopenia, which is weakness, because the body, by some mistaken method, will start to eat the muscles. They'll cause you to be atrophic. You'll lose weight, and you might lose fat, but you'll also become weak. And then when the shoulder becomes weak, you're gonna have problems with, if you are partially torn or a little bit subluxed, when it becomes weak, it will become fully torn and dislocate. So that's a challenge. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you, but again, the objective is to try and develop strength or movement in a isolated fashion to the point where you don't hinder, you don't further injure, but you work that deltoid to encourage muscle growth, mitochondrial genesis, and maybe more efficient metabolics. So you don't have to be big, and I'm not asking my patients to be bodybuilders. I just love doing this. Since I was 18, I'd love to do this, but now I'm doing it to survive, because the more muscle you have, the better you are at fighting diseases of aging. whether it's just falling or atrophy, sarcopenia, or cancer, heart attack, and stroke. I think all benefit from exercise. So this is just one movement. I'll try to put other movements in the near future. If you have any questions on how you do your overhead press, if you don't have a Smith machine, put them down below. Otherwise, I'll see you at the next video.